It is time for our bacteria project. Normally, we'd roam the hallways and classrooms of Conestoga High School, swabbing different locations to test if bacteria is growing in that location. But because of the circumstances we're in, we will do that same project in and around my house. So the purpose of this project is to find locations where bacteria is growing in my house. More on that in just a second. First, let's review the optimal conditions for the growth of bacteria. Bacteria prefer a warm, moist environment. They also happen to grow where lots of human contact has occurred. So you'll get little or no bacteria growth in cold environments or dry environments or places where there is not much human contact. So you want to keep those growing conditions in mind when you make your predictions here in a second. Some things we're going to control during this investigation. First off, all the Petri plates I have prepared have the same amount of food. So there's nutrient agar on this plate, and every plate that I've prepared has the same amount of that agar. Another thing we will control is the bacteria will all be given the same amount of time to grow. Once we collect the bacteria, we'll give it the weekend to grow. All the bacteria will be grown at the same temperature. It'll be left at room temperature. And the final control is that one quadrant on each Petri dish will be left unswabbed. So you can see I've marked 4 different quadrants on here. The 4th quadrant on each Petri dish will not be swabbed. In other words, a location will not be tested there. That's going to be our control. A few other assumptions we're going to make during this investigation. First of all, you'll have to trust me that all the materials that we're going to use during our collection of bacteria have been sterilized to prevent contamination. That leads to another assumption then. Any bacteria that grows comes from the source of that swab. Once we swab the different locations and have it on the Petri plate, we are not going to tamper or handle the Petri plate in any way during that growing period. That will also help prevent contamination. Those are assumptions that we're going to make. The hypotheses for our bacteria experiment. These hypotheses are based on the optimal growing conditions. We should probably assume that the most bacteria can be found in places that are warm, moist, and have lots of human contact. We should also expect that the opposite is true. We're not going to get much bacteria in cold, dry places or places that have very little human contact. So these are going to be our 2 hypotheses. So the last thing we need to do before we let our bacteria culture for a few days is make some predictions. So what you'll want to do is go to the Google Doc where I've assigned you a Petri plate that you're going to be observing. So here is the Google Doc. So you'll want to find your name and what Petri plate you've been assigned. So if you are Carissa or Sumerian or Jagger, you've been assigned Petri plate number 7. Quadrant 1 is a swab from the dog food bowl. Quadrant 2 is a swab from Ike's video game controller. And quadrant 3 is a swab from inside my daughter's mouth. And then the last quadrant is a control that will not be swabbed at all. So once you find your name and you observe what places in my house have been swabbed for bacteria, then you can go back and make your predictions. So you want to make a prediction as to what quadrant will have the most growth, the least growth, and then in between. So if it was me, I would predict my daughter's mouth has the most growth, because unless you remind her, she never brushes her teeth. So then we got the dog bowl and the video game controller as well. Okay, you just predict which one's going to have a medium amount of growth and which one will have the least amount of growth. And then give me some type of rationale. Why do you think those are going to have the most, the least, the middle amount? And why do you think the control is going to have no growth of bacteria? Once you've completed the predictions, all we have to do now is wait, let our bacteria grow from the places that my kids and I swabbed for you.